Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Servants. Today we're going to be looking at a very special character. Yes, today's episode is going to be on the unique ghost in the machine that is the Friend Point Gacha, and famed for being the canonically worst servant in Fate, Angra Mainyu. He holds the unique position in FGO of being the only 0-star servant, as well as being a budget Avenger. That is, if you consider the fact that his summon rate is abysmal to the point where you can play the game for years and never come across him as being budget. Regardless, he is a fascinating figure in both the game and in history, for his unusual significance. He is more than just a 1-1 Highwayman lookalike, rather he is quite literally the manifestation of all evil. So, without further ado, let's get started. Angra Mainyu, also known as Ahriman, is the main adversary in Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is one of the oldest monotheistic religions that we are aware of, originating in Afghanistan around 4,000 years ago. However, it first surfaces in the historical record sometime around the 5th century. It was created by a man named Zoroaster, after he had several visions of spirits revealing to him the truth of the world. As a monotheistic religion of the time, it is unique in that it had a messiah figure, a single god called Ahura Mazda, a concept of judgment after death, and a heaven and hell. This may not seem unique in the modern world, however, Zoroastrianism is credited as being a possible influence to the Abrahamic religions of Christianity and Islam. And with Islam in particular, there are several direct comparisons to be made, such as praying 5 times a day and the comparison to the angel Gabriel to Ameshspenta, a divine being in Zoroastrianism among others. Let me stop and remind you all that I am not a religious scholar. I am a goat with a computer, a library, and a healthy interest in history. In the event that I get any of this completely wrong, please inform me in the comments. Anyway, among the visions granted to Zoroaster was one of the creator of all things and all that is good in the world, Ahura Mazda, and then after, the vision of a primordial being that represented evil, Angra Mainyu. With this, he was also given the visions of 2 concepts, Asha, meaning order, and Druj, meaning deception. From here, Zoroaster began seeking Asha for the remainder of his life and began teaching others of what he had seen. In Zoroastrianism, Angra Mainyu is most closely comparable to a Satan figure. However, there is one thing that should be kept in mind, their origins and what they represent. Satan was cast out of heaven after rebelling against God. Angra Mainyu is quite literally described as evil incarnate, a byproduct from the creation of all things by Ahura Mazda. Let's briefly look at the etymology of the name Angra Mainyu to understand this better. Mainyu roughly translates to mind or spirit, the internal workings of the person, if you will. Angra roughly translates to destruction, angry, disorder, or chaos. Together, this makes Angra Mainyu the destructive mind. So, unlike Satan, a figure of rebellion against order who then schemes against God, Angra Mainyu exists as the doubt, evil, and destruction that lies dormant in the hearts of all things that live. To tune back into the creation of Zoroastrianism, one of the main deviations from tradition in this religion is the monotheistic nature of it. Zoroaster did not fully get rid of the existing deities, though. He did something similar to what the Romans did to have people better accept their new concept. He incorporated these deities into the mythos by demoting them to divinities, rather than deities. However, he split them down the middle. Half of the existing deities were followers of good, the Ahuras, and deities that had either succumbed to wickedness or were born of it were called the Devas. Zoroastrianism has the Devas placed as the offspring of what can be assumed is Angra Mainyu, though this is still somewhat contested as they do not explicitly use his name. However, they are claimed to have been born from worse thinking, which could point to Angra Mainyu as the father. There is a second and more popular belief of Angra Mainyu's existence that more closely resembles the Abrahamic Satan. This goes one of 2 ways at the start, but ultimately has the same outcome. One is that Angra Mainyu is the twin brother of the creator of all things, Ahura Mazda. The other is that he is the son of Ahura Mazda and has a twin brother named Spenta Mainyu, who is comparable to the Holy Spirit. For the one where Angra Mainyu and Ahura Mazda are twins, the original androgynous creator god existed alone in the universe, and they desired children who could create heaven and hell and everything in between. So for 1,000 years, the deity called Zurvan made sacrifices, and after 1,000 years, they began to doubt if this was actually working. From this, Ahura Mazda and Angra were born. Mazda from the sacrifices and Angra from his doubt. It is said that Zurvan, realizing it would be twins, would grant their firstborn rule over all of creation. Upon learning this, Angra tore his way out of the womb. Respecting their promise, Zurvan granted Angra rule over all things, but only for 9,000 years, after which Ahura Mazda would be given eternal rule. Whichever the opposite of Angra is, be it Spenta or Mazda, they are always presented as good. Interestingly enough, it is implied that Angra chooses to be evil, rather than being born as such. Angra states that it is not that he cannot create anything good, but rather that he chooses not to. But to prove that he can, he creates the peacock. There you go, DW, there's a costume dress idea. Regardless, Angra Mainyu would create hordes of demons instead to torment the mortal realm. However, it is believed that when the Day of Judgment comes, Angra Mainyu and his demons will be damned to their own realm, where they will constantly devour each other until they vanish from existence like a candle left lit. Thus the world shall be redeemed, and wickedness will no longer exist. An alternate ending is that he exists forever as a constant good versus evil, as without one, the other does not exist. However, it is believed by modern practitioners of Zoroastrianism, and yes, it does still exist, that Angra Mainyu's existence is purely an allegorical one. He exists solely as a warning against the notion of wicked thoughts and the fact that evil does indeed exist. But there are legends dedicated to Angra Mainyu solely, and how people have overcome him, much in the way that we see stories of people besting the devil in fiddle competitions. One of these stories is the tale of Tamuras. He was born in an age when the demons of Angra Mainyu were running rampant. Tired of seeing the suffering of others, he used magic to subdue and enslave Angra Mainyu, riding upon his back for 30 years, and all the while putting a stop to his evil ways. Angra's demons attempted to free their master, but 1/3 were killed by the mace of Tamuras and the other 2/3 were enslaved, bringing peace to the world, and making him a candidate for Grand Rider. Every day for 30 years, Tamuras rid Angra Mainyu to the ends of the earth and back. He only managed to escape after coaxing Tamuras' wife with jewels to tell him how. Tamuras is prone to vertigo, and during a certain point in the ride, he experiences it at its worst. When they hit this point the next day, Angra Mainyu bucks him off and swallows him whole. After the corpse is not discovered, Tamuras' brother, Jamshid, asks a sage of Mazda to teach him a trick to retrieve the corpse of his brother from within the belly of the demon. The sage tells him that Angra loves 2 things: music and anal sex. Jamshid finds where Angra Mainyu is and begins to sing. This prompts Angra to begin masturbating in anticipation. Jamshid and Angra Mainyu strike a deal that Jamshid will plow Angra if he gets the body of his brother back first. Angra agrees and bends over. Jamshid thrusts his arm into the demon's anus and pulls out his brother's corpse, placing it on the ground before making a break for it. Angra gives chase but is unable to catch him thanks to the magic of the sage. He then falls back into hell. Jamshid retrieves his brother's corpse and gives it a proper burial. All is not over for him though, as Jamshid notices his arm that he had stuck up the ass of all evil was now diseased and withering, similarly to leprosy. He then leaves society and wanders alone on the mountains and deserts. That is, until an ox urinates on his arm, curing him, and thus ox urine was known as a curative property in Zoroastrianism. Angra is also the creator of menstruation in women. The primordial demoness, Yahi, promises Angra that she shall destroy the creations of Mazda. For this, Angra defiles her with a kiss, and thus menstruation was created. She is then tasked with spreading it to all females. But, other than that, he operates similarly to the devil of the medieval world, meaning that he was present in all things and could afflict others with illnesses, or ruin should he desire to. But I'm also curious as to how fate has interpreted him, and why. He is described as the weakest heroic spirit, and here's why. Angra Mainyu, summoned in fate, is not the actual Angra Mainyu. He is simply a villain whose name was redacted from the Avesta. He served as a scapegoat for the village that he lived in, picked to be the cause of all the evils in the world, and tortured as a result. They needed to blame someone for all the terrible things that have ever happened, and he was the one that they had picked, and as such, was tormented until his mind broke. He had all of the curses of the world carved onto his skin, and was not permitted to die unless it was from old age. Through the action of easing the minds of the people with his sacrifice, he became qualified to be a heroic spirit. He felt one thing for the longest time, and that was the natural feeling of hatred that anyone would have after being forced to become a sacrifice like this. He hated humanity, and all things for that matter, but found that despite all of this, there was one thing that he did love. He loved the world. Despite everything, and watching as who he was originally fade away into obscurity, he eventually accepted his role as the representation of evil. The implications of this, when compared to the actual history, is that thousands of years ago, a man was pointed to for being the cause of all evil. And then, this lowly man's legend was built up into everything I have said until now. there never truly was a source of all evil in this world, merely an ordinary man who accepted the role despite not having the talent for it. After his being summoned by the Ainsburns and then being killed in the Third Holy Grail War, his spirit in the Grail was able to manifest as a proper heroic spirit, an Avenger. His influence tainted the Grail, and he emerged from its depths. He was born from the wishes of all of those who had wished that he was the source of all evil. He has no true appearance, simply a black void of existence, but takes the form of Shiro Emiya in Fate Hollow Atraxia, with darker skin and less clothing. I won't go into his role in the actual Fate story, but I would like to examine his skill set in Noble Phantasm to see where we could draw connections. His first skill is Zarek, the Right Fang Grinder. Zarek is a female deva under the service of Angra Mainyu who governs over poison and aging. As the skill reduces crit rate, this actually fits well thematically. His second skill is Tarek, the Left Fang Grinder. This is the representation of hunger, which is once again fitting as the skill reduces attack and NP gauge. Fun fact, his two weapons are these two skills. His third skill is originally Annihilation Wish, which comes from the Fate lore, as he is the harbinger of desire to destroy all things. It's a quick buck that scales over time that will kill him after 5 turns. This skill evolves into the End of the Fourth Night, where he is now able to receive stackable guts. This is because he was killed on the 4th day of the Holy Grail War, but from his death he was able to revive as an even more powerful being. His Noble Phantasm is Vergavesta, false copy of the inscribed creation. This transforms him into a beastly humanoid and puts him into a stasis. He then inflicts true damage equal to how much damage he took that turn to the enemy, but in the event that he is killed, nothing happens. This is said to be a basic curse that reflects any damage done to him back at the enemy as well, and is derived from his fate interpretation rather than from his legend. Interesting note I found in my research, his line when he inflicts the damage back includes the phrase, "die upside down." I was always curious about this, and while I didn't receive a direct answer, a possible one comes from the tradition of writing Angra Manyu's name upside down as a sign of disrespect, so, through this thought process, being told to die upside down would be viewed as him essentially disrespecting those who he's attacking. But that's just a theory of mine. And that is it! One Angry Mango in the books. Thank you all so much for watching, I really do appreciate it. Let me know what you thought in the comments, like the video as it really does help out the channel. Subscribe to catch these as they go up. I don't think I've ever explicitly announced this, but I do polls to see which servants come next. So if that is something that you're interested in, subscribe to catch them as they go up as well. Other than that, I have a Twitch channel for significantly less structured content, as well as a Twitter for life updates and such. But for now, keep your chin up. Peace.